I saw Crip tweeted out like a card. I'm like, that's not real. I look at him like, that's real.
Which card?
Crip was tweeting out the Mankirk card. And I'm just there's
no, that's real.
Like, that's so cool.
You gotta help Mankirk find his wife.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if anyone's seen her.
She's in your deck somewhere.
She's cool probably idea. Fine. She's probably like right down between two quilboars or something. Fine.
I have to ask off the bat, what made you want to totally revamp the idea of the classic set as everybody knows it for the Year of the Griffin? Like, what were some of the main design goals that the team had in mind with this transition?
Sure, there's a bunch of design goals that come with remaking the core set. So I think the first one that's most obvious to players, the most impactful for players, is there's going to be a bunch more cards that you get for free, just from leveling up. We had two sets previously, the basic and classic set that people understand pretty well at this point. The basic set was the free set. The classic set was the set that we sold originally, and now we're kind of combining those two into one different set called the core set, but all of it's free. From a design perspective, I think one of the things that's really important from that first set is it's there to teach you Hearthstone, but also to prepare you for what Hearthstone is going to be like. Once you're out there on ladder and experiencing things, the core set and the cards that you earn should teach you a little bit about what that experience is going to be like. So a lot of those cards are going to be some serious considerations for a bunch of meta decks out there too. Hopefully not so powerful to the point where every deck is using the same cards throughout the entire year, but we think that like almost all the cards will be a consideration for you'll be putting in different sort of meta decks, and there's a lot of really popular cards that players have been using for a really long time. So there's a bunch of synergies there. So the idea is that you'll level up, you'll earn some exciting cards, and by the end of your leveling experience in a class, when you get to level 10, the cards that you earn result in some semblance of like a deck with some synergy that feels like you can take it out into the ladder and have some success with it. And we really think that experience of having that jumping off point for now I can really feel like I'm learning a lot about Hearthstone and what this experience is like without really having to do a whole bunch of investment with either real money or with in-game currency. That was really important to us to accomplish. And I think the core set is going to do that.
And if you've played much Hearthstone already, you probably are already level 10 on all the classes, so you'll just have it all automatically as soon as we launch.
There are so many cards in the core set, over 250 from what I'm looking at, and some of them are going to be unchanged and others are going to be reimaginings like the dragons that we saw in the opening ceremony. So how soon will it be before players can get a full look at the core set?
Next week, next week you'll see the full 235 card core set.
So going into the expansion, what is the story behind Forged in the Barrens?
So Forged in the Barrens, we have done a good job, we think, so far of telling stories about like places and characters in the world of Warcraft. But something we're excited to do is the experience of the journey of leveling up in World of Warcraft or in RPG or fantasy games in general. And so this whole year is going to focus on these 10 characters, our 10 mercenaries, which are entirely new characters, and see their journey as they level up. 5 of them are on the Horde, 5 of them are on the Alliance. But here we're focused on the Barrens. The Barrens is a low-level zone, but it's also where you like first started out, first grouped up with other people, other members of your Horde. It's where orcs and tauren and trolls first came together, and there's danger and conflict, raiding quilboar and marauding centaur, and we'll see what all that creates this turmoil as you go out and become an adventurer.
How will the new keywords like frenzy work? And also, I'm seeing these new like tribal spells like holy and fell and nature. Like, what does that open up in terms of card design?
Well, frenzy, first of all, frenzy is a new keyword specific for Forged in the Barrens. It's a one-time trigger the first time that minion survives damage. So it takes damage, it survives, and it fires back with this trigger of some sort. Samuro, for example, will deal damage equal to his attack to all enemy minions. Another minion, like a Druid of the Plains, for example, might transform into a giant Kodo. There's a variety of things that'll happen, just like we've seen, like Spell Burst is a similar one-time trigger, but based on spells. Here, it's about surviving, and we think this will create some really fun gameplay. The other thing you mentioned, though, Spell Schools. Spell Schools is a permanent new addition to Hearthstone, not just Forged in the Barrens. There are several spells in Forged in the Barrens that have a spell school, but there's also literally hundreds in the past that we've added. We've going back and added spell schools to all of the previous spells as well. And this lets us create synergies. So you can have a card like the Spirit Healer, which says after you cast a holy spell, give a random friendly minion +2 health. There's other synergies that we can do there, like Brucon, one of our mercenaries, is a legendary minion that says nature spell damage +3. So by having these spell schools, that helps us with the themes, the fantasy of all these spells, but also the gameplay. We can create synergies and fun interactions.
The theme of mercenaries is going to be prevalent throughout the Year of the Griffin. It's really early, but what is the story behind the mercenaries?
Well, the story, we're not sharing a whole lot about the story quite yet. Mercenaries, Hearthstone Mercenaries is a new game mode, and it's a strategic RPG. It's got some roguelike elements. You'll build a team of heroes from Warcraft and Hearthstone and other brand new characters, and watch them grow, and explore and get into fights and combat with like I mentioned, roguelike elements. Like there's randomly generated maps, and you'll learn new skills, gather equipment, and grow and evolve your heroes.
And this BlizzCon line has had a heavy focus on celebrating the past. We've seen it with WoW, we've seen it with Diablo, and now we're seeing it with Hearthstone, where you guys are unveiling a classic mode. So what made you guys want to go back to Hearthstone's past in this way?
I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff I think that happened back in Classic, and I think that you know, once your game reaches the point where it's 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and you still have players that played back then, there's a lot of nostalgia I think that comes from longing for a different experience. But not only that, it is just a different Hearthstone experience. Like we had originally the only version of Hearthstone that you could play was Wild. It's like all the cards, and then we introduced Standard to have a different format than that. I just had a different subset of cards that played a little bit differently. Something that you may be more or less interested in. And then Classic mode is just another version of that, where it's a new game mode. If you played back then, maybe you have some nostalgia for that, but also the game's played a lot differently. Things are a little bit slower. A lot of the strategies were a lot different. And, you can go back and look at those cards, as they existed back then. So, we took a snapshot in time. You see stuff like 4-mana Leroy and people playing Sylvanas and that sort of stuff. So just a different gameplay environment. And I think Hearthstone, as Mercenaries is showing, as new format show, as Battleground show, we wanted it to be kind of like a platform for a bunch of different experiences. So if you ever get tired of something, that there's something right nearby that might be a different experience that you could really enjoy and dig into.
Similar to how Burning Crusade Classic is coming to WoW, can Hearthstone players expect a similar return to Classic expansions or adventures in the future?
We set ourselves up to be able to do things like that. So, if Classic is a super big hit and there's a big desire that after some amount of time to merge Classic into Classic plus Naxxramas and to have just the natural ramp up, I could see totally doing that. For now, we don't have a pipeline that says we're looking to release that, but we could. I think just like with any of our new modes, we'll be looking to hear a bunch of feedback and see what the player population is like and what the players who are playing Classic, what is it that they want. And in terms of changing the card pool up, definitely something that we could do.
Little fun question for you guys. Do you have an early favorite card out of either the new course set or the new expansion?
I'd say probably Mancrick. I definitely am looking forward to seeing who can help Mancrick find his wife.
What is the story behind that? How did you come up with that idea?
I mean, if you played WoW back in WoW Classic or original WoW, like you know Barrens chat, you would frequently hear someone asking, "Hey, does anyone know where Mancrick's wife is? Gotta help find her and see what happened to her."
Looking for one-man tank, Razorfin downs. Looking for one-man tank, Razorfin downs. Hours, just hours.
Yep.
A lot of sad stories that come from the Barrens. I think one of the reasons that we go there in the first place is that it's a pretty good avenue to tell the story of budding adventurers who are trying to find their way, get their first pieces of loot, really go out into an environment that's a little wild. It's it's pretty far away from the city, so there's nowhere else to go. You got to kind of brave it on your own, and that's a story that I think that you can tell without with people who haven't played WoW, or people who that sense of adventure is really kind of what we were trying to capture. But there's a lot of nostalgia baked in there, and characters like Mancrick. And a lot of the text and the things that people would say if they went through that experience, I think that they'll have a really good time with some of the callbacks and stuff.
Can we talk about some of the visual art styles of the Barrens? Because me and my friends used to call it Delaware, because it's literally barren, right? There's not a lot going on in that environment. Was that a challenge to create like over the top, coming from like Schooliomancy, all these like over the top magical amazing biomes to like the Barrens? Was that a challenge to make that just as vibrant and alive as like Schooliomancy or Kel'Thuzad's Tower?
Karazhan. Yes and no. It's somewhat deceptive. The name is definitely the Barrens, and there are definitely open stretches of barren grassland. It lives up to its name in that regard. But there's also tucked away in various places, like there's oases. There's the pirate port town. There's the crossroads. There's the forest full of harpies. There's of course all the quilboar and their razorfen thorny undergrowth areas. So if you poke around the corners of the Barrens, in between those barren grasslands, there actually is a lot going on there. But that's not to say we still don't have a ton of the just beautiful rolling grasslands and hills there as well. I think one of the things Hearthstone does is focus more on the characters than the setting. The setting is important and shows up in the background of all of our cards, but most of the cards are focused on a particular character there. And we can still focus on some really interesting characters and follow our art style of like whimsy and colorful and exciting.
And I guess the last question for me is, and I ask this because this comes up in the office every now and then. We've seen Blizzard take games to PC and consoles more and more in the last few years. Has there been any consideration to taking Hearthstone to console, specifically the handheld hybrid, the Switch?
Yeah, we don't have any plans for that. I think like input design is really interesting, so trying to figure out how we would put Hearthstone like on a controller inputs is an interesting question to ask, but it's not something that we've dove into in terms of trying to solve. Not for now.